Good morning again. Some colleagues are still winding up their breakfast, so we'll give them another 15 minutes. In the meantime, just feel at home. We will start with the session yesterday that carried over. So Professor will invite you to join us. We had 2 presentations in detail and then one at a very high level. So we'll invite you and those as a discussant primarily, but also as a panelist to present. That's how we'll kick off the day. So feel at home, Karibusana.
Chipukizi Voice of Drama Cooperative is a service-based cooperative existing at the Cooperative University of Kenya and consisting of the students and alumni.
Chipukizi has a leadership structure and we have 7 management board members where we have 5 executive and the other 3 that constitute the board. We also have a supervisory that constitutes 3 members.
Our key role as members, first of all, is to abide by the bylaws of the cooperative, pay the share capital, then contribute.
So for the major decisions, of course, we involve our members. And that happens during the AGM and the special general meetings.
As a worker cooperative society, we are doing stage plays, we are doing dramas.
And also we do a bit of campaigns, mobilizations, and marketing. Clear program has really impacted Chipukizi Worker Cooperative. They came in during our registration process and they assisted a lot in terms of the protocols followed to register. Secondly, they have really impacted us in terms of capacity building and education.
Career program has taken us through art and drama training, has taken us through entrepreneurship training, it has taken us through gender training, it has taken us through financial literacy.
The key challenge that we had before we formed a cooperative is that we were just a local group. We were unable to approach an organization and tell them who we are. So it was just a small group existing at the university.
And now we are a cooperative, we are formalized, our scope has been enlarged. People trust us now because we are legalized. I wasn't really confident with myself. I was shy, kind of. I was more of being into myself. I was an introvert. I wasn't open to people. But I was given that space to be the confident, the power leader that I am now.
Financially, some of us were unable even to cater for our basic needs, like food, transport expenses, rent.
In the service industry, you find that majority of youth get wages which are below the market rate. And with the worker cooperative business model, these youth are able to get access to competitive rates in the industry and also decent work environment where by virtue of being employees, they are also owners of the business enterprise.
It will be the best opportunity for young people to come together. You put together your skills and your energies, and then you sell out. Remember, if you're in a worker cooperative, you increase your bargaining power.
We are going to work for the welfare of our community, for the welfare of ourselves. When the youth get empowered, the community goes ahead.
If it weren't for Chipukizi Worker Cooperative, I wouldn't know where I would be now. I am just happy, I'm just overwhelmed because this is who I am, and Chipukizi Worker Cooperative have made me to be this kind of a person. So big up to Chipukizi Worker Cooperative.
Kigro Recyclers Worker Cooperative ilianza kama enterprise na ilianza tu na watu wawili ambaye ni mimi Roger na treasurer wetu ambaye anaitwa Alex Karaoke. Na Kanjo walikuwa wanafanya clean up, alafu sasa walipoenda kuna takataka zilibaki, ndio tukasema wacha tuchukue mkokoteni tuanze kuibeba. Wateja wakaanza kutuita, mnaweza tubebea hii gunia, mnaweza tubebea. Tukaona kwa hivyo hii ni income generating activity.
Before ni join nilikuwa Nairobi University nikisoma sociology. But sasa after shule pata kazi pia ilikuja kwa noma kidogo. Ndio tukaanza hii mambo ya self employment.
Nilikuwa chef. So ile story ya corona uliona vitu zilikamzika collapse. Hoteli zilifungwa. So ulipata tulikuwa hard time hiyo wakati, unaona. So kabla nikama hapo nilikuwa bado tu kujikaza.
Hatukukuwa tunajua mambo ya worker cooperative mpaka tukakutana na global communities. Ndio wakati wakaanza kutufundisha juu ya hii model, tukaona hii model inaweza fit sana na hii biashara yetu yenye tunafanya. Kando na hiyo, hatungeweza fanya kazi watu wawili. Sasa pia vijana walikuwa wanatuangalia, mara ya kwanza walidharau, lakini tukiendelea waliona kumbe hii pesa iko hapa. Ndio wakaanza kukuja moja moja, mbili mbili. So the thing that made us do the worker cooperative, hiyo moja moja mbili mbili, ukishawachukua wakuwe team, unajua utaki mtu aende akuje leo alafu kesho aende. Unataka uretain mtu na pia apate benefits more than ile wage tu anapata ile yenye analipwa. So hapo ndio tuliona wacha tuform cooperative ikuwe ukikujaga kazi kuna much more that you can gain apart from only the salary ama the wage that you get.
We found the worker cooperative model to be a good model to use and as an entry point to increase youth participation and gender mainstreaming within the cooperative ecosystem in Kenya.
As a lady, nafurahia sana kwa in Kigro kwa sababu one thing na imenisaidia sana, neza loan saving, imenisaidia tena neza endelea na masomo yangu, nipate masomo ya juu kuliko yenye niko nayo sana.
Nilikuwa nafikiria ile design ya kitambo ile wamama wanafaaga au ndio wakuosha vyombo, ati wanawake wetu tu ndio wakufanya hizo kazi kama hizo. Lakini wakati nilienda kwa hii training ilinipatia ile nikajua hizi gender zetu male na female kunafaa kuwa na equity na equality.
Nimekuwa empowered socially and economically. First of all, socially in terms of interaction na watu. Saisi kama zamani venye ungeenda tu kuongea mtu hivi hivi, sasa unaenda with the purpose and with the meaning.
The worker cooperative model provides longer term jobs because the member is a worker and an owner. So there's job security there. We've also seen that it provides better income for the member.
Nimefaidika, naweza lipa nyumba on time, kisha pia naweza save kwa hiyo amount pia napata. Yaani naweza sema tu niko na income tu mahali.
Watu walikuwa wanatoroka sana. Unapata mtu anakuja kazi leo, anawacha kazi kesho. Lakini sasa unaona kwa hiyo worker cooperative, mtu atatoa monthly subscription na atatoa membership na bado atakuwa analipwa kwa kazi.
I believe Kenya is at a very great moment right now for the cooperative movement, and more specifically for the worker cooperative model. Given the advancements within the policy and legislative space to entrench the worker cooperative model and recognize it, as well as having pilot worker cooperatives that are ready to advocate for the needs of the worker cooperative and promotion of the same in the country.
Tulikuwa tunaitwa chokora, mpaka mimi nilikuwa narudi nyumbani naulizwa kwani ulienda shule juu ya nini jamani? Na hii kazi ya machokora hii hata hahitaji shule, unaona? Lakini saa hii vile tunaongea saa hii hawatuiti chokora. Saa hii wanatuita Kigro, na tumepata jina kulingana na hii kazi vile tuliichukua serious.
My name is Susan Wawero. I am the Deputy Director Legal Services in Nairobi Metropolitan Service, which is under the Office of the President. It's important to continuously develop your knowledge. It's important in a dynamic world, in a world that now is globalized, to develop your knowledge. It's not enough to know what your profession does. It's not enough to just know about your company, your city or your country. It's important to know what the region is about, what the world is about, because as we've seen with COVID, the solutions to problems are now global. So it's important to impart yourself with solutions from the whole world so that you have a holistic decision to do. I enjoyed that Strathmore Business School had a global outlook towards solutions. I mostly enjoyed the case studies. They were very practical to what I was doing at the time, and even now. It was something I could take from the classroom directly into my office. I also liked the international module. It exposed us to how other countries, developed countries, are also grappling with the same things that the developing world is grappling, whether it's affordable housing, traffic management, cleanliness. That exposed me to looking for solutions not only for my city but also for the global world. I also liked our faculty. They are very well knowledgeable and they're very selfless. They go above the call of teaching. They are there for you not only as your teachers but also as your mentors. So that I also liked. And the research focus, academic rigor, that has also been something I enjoyed. Currently, what I learned in MPPM has made me a better decision maker because I learned to look at what somebody's interests are as opposed to what they are portraying, because somebody can come portraying something yet the interest is different. Time management is also something I've learned as a leader from MPPM, how to delegate so that my time is used in a better, valuable way. Personal life, I wasn't a good time manager. So being in MPPM, I had to learn how to manage my time and just dedicate myself to the things that are going to propel me and add value to my time, and to learn how to delegate what I did not need to do. I also learned in my personal career to focus on what my mandate is. You cannot be a jack of all trades, but when you focus on one area and be an expert at it and dedicate 10,000 hours to that thing to become an expert, that I learned from public policy.
Kenya's first cooperative, a dairy cooperative, was formed in 1908. In 1931, the first cooperative ordinance was enacted to regulate operations of cooperatives, marking the first time the government of Kenya was formally involved in the cooperative movement. In 2010, the promulgation of Kenya's 2010 Constitution marked a major milestone for the cooperative movement, as the devolved function opened the way for counties to legislate on cooperative development.
The national government is largely responsible for policy and legislation. It is also responsible for issues of governance in terms of making sure that there's proper regulation. It's looking at standardization. It is responsible for registration of cooperatives. Once the provisional registration has been done by the national government, the final registration of cooperatives, and it actually provides for review of the policy.
The development of the new legislation prompted the need for harmonization between the existing county cooperative laws, the National Cooperative Bill of 2021, and the Constitution of Kenya 2010.
One of the things that we are trying to do is to ensure that we align the current law, which was the 1997 Cooperative Societies Act to align it with the Constitution of Kenya 2010, because there were major changes that were brought by the Constitution of Kenya, the devolved form of government, and cooperatives were actually devolved to be managed at the county government levels. And because of that, the current act could not continue working for them anymore, and that is why it was necessary to come up with a new policy, the process of which started in 2019, and by 2022 it became a seasonal paper.
When it comes to the county governments would then be responsible for the day-to-day operations of cooperatives, their supervision, issues of their promotion, issues of the licensing. This will be the responsibility of the county governments. So this policy really is realigning the cooperative sector with the devolved structure of government, both at the national level and at the county level. And it specifies clearly the respective roles of each levels of government.
At the national level, I think we have made some progress in the regulatory and legislative fields. This has taken quite a while. We appreciate since devolution started in 2013, we were only able to work through and pass a policy in 2021, requiring a lot of dialogue. So we appreciate that there was extensive dialogue, there was a lot of stakeholder engagement, and finally we have a cooperative, a national cooperative policy in place, which was necessitated by the Constitution of 2010, whereby cooperative development was fully devolved.
Actual unbundling of the function is one of those areas that has not been very clear for a while, but with the policy and the bill that we've come up with recently in 2021, that made the roles a bit more clear.
Our role as global communities has been to support the harmonization and creation of an enabling environment, both at national and county government level. Global Communities' CLEAR program has been engaged in supporting and facilitating public-private dialogue, public-public dialogue, stakeholder engagement, as well as provision of direct technical assistance in policy and legislative drafting.
Training and research go hand in hand. It's through research that we are able to identify gaps that need to be filled. Through our research, we have been able to come up with the appropriate curriculum for engaging with communities, for engaging with the county governments. We are working with many county governments in the country. We have signed with various county governments memorandum of understanding to enable us to then operate within the counties without worrying that we are stepping on the mandate of the county government. So we are working very closely to train those at the county level, to train the movement at the county level. We are also in those MOUs that we have signed, we do get students from the different counties that come to the cooperative university, where they go through our various programs which are aimed and geared towards supporting the cooperative movement.
Through the support of the global communities, we were able to support some communities that we work with at the university through the collaboration that we have with them. And the support has been more to capacity build the various cooperatives and also the various county governments in the areas of cooperatives. Sometimes it is development of strategic plans or any other areas that are needed within particular counties.
The importance of policies cannot be understated, as these have helped create an enabling environment for players in the movement. Global Communities has played a major role in working together with the government of Kenya, and the following have been successfully established. 1. An inclusive stakeholder engagement at both levels of government and also between the two levels through increased public-private dialogue. 2. Capacity strengthening of county government cooperative development officials through a collaboration with Strathmore Business School. This collaboration helped establish the Executive Public Policy Making Process course, which has seen 264 participants from 28 counties successfully graduate. 3. A partnership with national and county state-run institutions extending technical support in the policy development process. 4. A coordinated development partners mandate to support policy and legislation via a policy network. 5. Technical expertise and advisory in matters policy and legislation. This included formal submission of recommendations for the Cooperative Bill of 2021 and supporting the Council of Governors to conduct stakeholder engagement forums to collect input to the Model County Cooperatives Law. 6. Support for mobilization of state and non-state actors to participate in the policy-making process. 7. Provision of thought leadership and knowledge transfer through policy briefs as well as briefing sheets highlighting
Good morning again. It's now 9:30 and I believe we can kick off as soon as we settle down. Welcome to day 2 of our 2-day learning event, From Policy to Action. Again, my name is Martin Baya. I'll be your MC on day number 2. We had a very, very exciting day 1. I want to welcome all those who may be joining us for the first time. Yesterday, we had a set of keynote speakers who unpacked for us the world of cooperatives, unpacked for us the world of policy making, and unpacked for us the triple helix of industry, government, and academia. We first heard from Professor Israel Da Silva, who's the Deputy Vice Chancellor in charge of innovation research here at Strathmore, and he shared a variety of perspectives around innovation with a particular focus on solar, and specifically the experience of Strathmore using solar energy to drive various developmental outcomes. Before that, we had received a prayer from Father Paul Mimbi and his challenge to all of us who are gathered here to be Christ-like and to have specific set of attributes as servant leaders with a focus on excellence. We heard from Dr. George Njenga, who highlighted for us what Strathmore has been able to do in the context of innovating towards learning, and how this specific program was able to take off without skipping a bit in the time of COVID due to a transition that had to happen given the cessation of movement in the country. Dr. Njenga is the Chief of Party for the USAID Strategic Partnerships, previously known as the Kenya Small Business Development Centers. And he is very passionate about the cooperative sector. He told us about the Golden Valley Cooperative up in Turkana and counties in Kenya's northwestern area, and how issues of insecurity are being addressed using that cooperative structure and framework. Thereafter, we heard from Olga, who is here with us today. Olga oversees this particular project within Global Communities, the CLEAR program, and she was able to share specific attributes about the program, key achievements the program has made, and specific details about the learning portion of this program, as well as the drafting in alignment with the policy-making process in Kenya for the cooperatives sector. We then heard from Professor Isaac Nyamongo, who's the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Cooperative Development, Research and Innovation at the Cooperative University of Kenya. He shared a variety of perspectives, told us about the experience within the university and across the sector in pursuit of the goals of this program, and more specifically, the capacity building that the university has been able to do with respect to drafting, bringing a lot of these policy ideas to life on the ground. We then heard from Mr. Daniel Marube, who is the Executive Director and CEO of the Cooperative Alliance of Kenya. And both during his presentation and later in the panel, he was able to articulate for us the issues around the cooperative bill, the challenges as that process of policy making plays out, the political dimensions at play, and a very practical sense of where that process currently is and is working towards its logical conclusion, hopefully within this year, with the coming into force of an act. But that political process continues playing on. We then heard from a set of actors in government at the national level. First, the advisor for cooperatives in the President's Economic and Transformation Office, Madam Daisy B. And she was able to articulate for us her own journey from initially serving within the leadership at the devolved level in Bomet County, along with her colleagues who are here with us. And that transition to engaging at the highest levels of national government. And she was able to articulate the priorities of His Excellency, the President, William Samoei Ruto, with respect to the cooperative sector. And she was also able to articulate where everyone can plug in. She touched on issues of governance, and she touched on a variety of cross-cutting issues impacting the cooperative sector. We then heard from the voice of the devolved level of government, the collective voice, Director Kizito Angalwa, who is the director who oversees committees within the Council of Governors Secretariat. Director Wangalwa had come with a prepared speech, but chose to speak from the heart, and a little later he was recognized by the Principal Secretary for making excellent set of remarks. The director took a very, very practical perspective, spoke in detail to the conflict that exists between the national and devolved level of governments, as well as the cooperation that exists between those two levels. He was able to share his own story from Busia County and tell his story of operating on the political side as a deputy governor, candidate, and in the role and all those different dynamics at play, and eventually making a transition to operating at the highest levels of devolved government. And he gave a set of challenges. He was able to interact with the various county members present and offered some words of advice and chart a way forward. And then finally, in that opening program, we got the keynote remarks from Principal Secretary Patrick Killemi, who oversees the cooperative docket within the State Department under the Ministry of Cooperatives, that also includes micro, small, and medium enterprises. He had a set of prepared remarks where he gave the government's position at the national level. He gave guidance on how the bill is navigating the process of coming to life as an act, building on what Bwana Marube had shared earlier. And in his own personal remarks afterwards, as he reflected, he was able to give a set of cross-cutting perspectives and ideas. And one particular nugget that stood out for those who are gathered, and one of the participants remarked on it, was this notion that development partners do not do things for free. They have their interests, and it's important to come to the negotiating table with interests well articulated. Thereafter, we took a break. As a collective team, we had our group photo. I believe that will be made available to the participants. And we had a tree planting led by the principal secretary and the larger team. And then we came back for a set of presentations. The first was by global communities. So we had Bobby Mkangi, who will be leading the panel this morning, and Mudhoni Njoroge, both lawyers by training and both key actors who've assisted with the drafting process. And they gave a presentation of highlights of the journey of the public policy making program in the period after all these interventions have happened. And then thereafter, we had a presentation by Tom Kimani, my colleague who's here with us, who was responsible for the assessment, the impact assessment for the program, and talked about all the various metrics that all of us gathered here, and yourselves as the county team were able to provide to confirm whether this program achieved its intended outcomes. He also talked about the journey we walked through, and I think the key takeaway was that the goals that this program had set, Olga's goals as outlined in her presentation, were met, and in many instances ended up opening up many new opportunities. Thereafter, we heard from Madam Diana Kendi, who's the County Executive Committee member overseeing the Cooperative's docket in Nyeri County. And she was able to tell us the story of Nyeri. And she was able to reflect on very, very specific experiences. One dimension that stood out, very practical, is that for first year actors in your respective roles, whether it's the CC, the chief officer, CEO, or the directors, is that in your first year of office, you will have many friends. And there will be an effort to get many things done. And she encouraged, think through that first year carefully. And she reflected some of the challenges for those who have specific terms versus those who are permanent and pensionable. And in very specific ways, she spoke about the experiences in Nyeri County, a little bit touching on issues of coffee, whereas earlier the principal secretary had touched on value chains and issues around leather. We then invited the entire panel that had spoken earlier, but we limited ourselves to the 5 who are present. We had Olga from Global Communities. We had Tom Kimani from Strathmore. And then we had Madam Daisy B representing the President's Economic Transformation Office, Professor Isaac Nyamongo representing the Cooperative University of Kenya, and Bwana Daniel Marube representing the Cooperative Alliance of Kenya. And in that panel, we took questions from the floor. There were many, many questions, cross-cutting questions, issues around governance, issues around value chains, very practical issues around the bill, issues around individuals' personal journeys. In issues, I think, from Mandera County, we had very specific questions around, it was either value chains or it was related to offices and roles and the conflict that exists from parallel paths. So there are very many rich questions. And by the end of that panel, there was a strong sense that the audience felt heard and the issues that were raised were tackled in detail. And Madam Daisy B finished off the conversation with the topic of gender. Specifically, that panel had questions around sustainability, the Sustainable Development Goals in the context of energy. Kamau Asola had talked about a specific SDG. And then Madam B finished off with the question of gender in the context of cooperatives. And one model that stood out in all the conversations was the worker-owned cooperative. It was a consistent theme. It's been a priority for global communities. and it's been a priority for many actors just to get awareness around that particular model. And the parting shot from the Principal Secretary was a note of gratitude to the Global Communities team for creating awareness around that particular model. After that, we went for lunch break a little bit late. I think it was around almost 3:30, 3:40. And when we reconvened just shortly before 5 p.m., we had a set of presentations. So we had from, in detail, Kilifi County, Bwana George Katamu, and Bomet County, Bwana Frederick Koske. And then, and for those two, they gave very detailed perspectives on issues around advocative bills. And they also gave a specific position of where they've reached in the process. And then we were privileged to hear from the team from Narok County, I believe 5 or 6 strong, who shared where they are and have gotten into the process of trying to get the bill to move with some adjustments along the way. Which leads to this morning's session. We did not have a chance to interrogate that particular set of interventions. And so if you look at your programs on day 1, page 8, there was a panel discussion on stakeholder engagement, public participation, and operationalization of county cooperative policy and legislation, led by Bob Mkangi from Global Communities. It's therefore my pleasure to invite Bob to the stage. And Bob will take us through that panel. If you flip over to page 9, we've done the recap between 9 and 9:20. We started 30 minutes late. We have plenary reflections from day 1. We'll allow those to come into play during the Q&A after Bob has spoken, which should take roughly an hour. So Bob, one of the requests I'll have over and above responding to whatever you have for the panel, you can also take reactions on everything I've debriefed from yesterday, although we did a little bit of that yesterday with Mokami. So that's one of the requests I'll make. Then after that, we are going to have a second panel led by Modoni. Modoni is to my right, which will look at policy and legislative drafting, but we might end up breaking it into 2 panels since we have very many counties present. I was privileged to hear from Kitui County. There were 2 colleagues from Kitui, and they're doing amazing things in Kitui. So I think that'll get us quite excited. So it's my pleasure to hand over the mic to Bwana Mkangi, who will take us through the next panel. For all the participants, just reach out to the person next to you, wasalimie, and tell them one exciting thing you learned about Strathmore yesterday, and tell them one shocking thing you discovered about Strathmore yesterday. And I'll hand over to Bobby Mkangi. Karibuni sana.
Okay, thank you very much, Bwana Martin. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Hamjambo, habari ya asubuhi. So as you deliberate on the good thing and shocking thing you discovered about Strathmore, as was introduced, we are going to have a very interesting panel discussion based on a very, very, very intriguing topic in our country, and that is public participation, stakeholder engagement, and how these have stood in the operationalization of county cooperative policies and pieces of legislation. This is important considering that 13 years into the implementation of our constitution, public participation has become one of the most important entrenched values and principles, to the extent that as of yesterday, the High Court did deliver a decision for those of you who may recall, centered on whether the road here in Nairobi, formerly known as, or now currently still known as Dik Road, was to be renamed after the COTU leader's name, Francis Atwoli. And the High Court quashed this yesterday. And on what basis? There was no public participation. So this is a very, very important thing, even for us cooperators, us in the cooperative movement. And to help us discuss the experience of public participation, stakeholder engagement, and partnerships within this venture, may I call the following panelists to the stage. Kindly would Professor Wycliffe Oboka, who is the director of the Institute of Cooperative Development at the Cooperative University of Kenya, kindly come on stage. Bwana Patrick Mpatiany, the Director of Cooperative Development from Nairobi County, please join me on stage. Bwana Theuri Peter from Nyeri County, the Director, tafadhali join me on stage. Bwana Koskei Frederick, the Director from Bomet County, please also join me on stage. Bwana James Mwasi, the Director from Kilifi County, also please join me on stage. And then, I don't know whether we have any representation from the Cooperative Alliance of Kenya, CAK, this morning. State Department for Cooperatives. And I can see my sister from COG. Kindly. Mukami, kindly. Please join me on stage, Mukami. If we could have an extra seat. In fact, that will make my panel much better, because I was about to observe that unfortunately the gender issue, tunaongea juu ya public participation, alafu tunaanguka mtihani wa gender. So Mukami, please. So the lady and gentlemen here are going to help us discuss, help us reason through and appreciate and learn how our experience has been handling this very, very, as many of you may know, challenging, taming this challenging beast that was introduced in the Constitution 13 years ago. Public participation. Many of you on the stage have definitely dealt with our customers, our clients, the citizens and the residents of the counties that we represent. And Mukami, coming from the Council of Governors, definitely from a policy perspective and guidance on how this should be carried out in the different counties, will definitely have interesting or useful insights. And especially from a more synthesized perspective in terms of what the cross-cutting experience is coming from the different counties that we hail from. And so that we can save time, I'll jump onto the questions. And I think I will invite all of us to deal with each question. Kindly, as Bwana Martin guided, because time is not our best ally, if we could kindly prosecute the questions in the most precisely and concisely way, I think that will be very, very good. And I will start with the question around the experience, whether it's these pieces of legislation, policies, or even before this. We'd like to hear about your experiences, about the journey in the counties. We would love to know about the engagement strategies and partnerships that you employed to move the drafts to where they are right now. And kindly, maybe as you do that, you can tell us where you are as a county in the process of formulation and enactment of the policies. And then I think, Professor, you will also help us to digest this, and probably also coming from an academic institution. And we know the stereotype around academia is that these are ivory towers. And so we'd love to hear from an academic institution's perspective and the cooperative movement, how has the Cooperative University of Kenya been able to effectively handle public participation and stakeholder engagement in different ventures? And as I said, Mukami will also help us digest it from a more centralized and national perspective. So perhaps we could start from Bwana Mpatian, and then come this way, and then we'll have a professor, and then Mukami on this first question. So Bwana Mpatian, karibu. The microphone is right next, yes.
Good morning. We thank God it has been a good day since we wake up. And now we are here in the panel talking more about experience that we encountered in Narok County. In Narok County, in fact, it has been something that we have been encountering, that a lot of challenges when we are doing operation in the offices, because there are some other things that we need to do, and we have been limited in the office, so that we cannot go because we have been limited in the office during when we are giving out the services, or we are performing out the duties in our offices. If, for example, the experience when we are working in the offices, there are some limitation that we went through, and we could not work because we have been limited. So it is also a challenge that we experienced during that time. And we also, it has been also a challenge because there has been a war of between the national government and the county government, that the national government they did not give it us a clear pictures on how we can perform the duties or how we can operate, because most of the functions are still held in Nairobi. So being a default unit, that most of the services were still here in Nairobi. They did not give out the services that we could perform there down. For example, if it is a registration of cooperative society, they used to take a lot of time to register. When we send the applications for registration, they can take a long time, 2, 3 months, even 4 months. Even at the same time, our documents are lost sometime in Nairobi. So you come up again following the documents, and then you are being told, they are sent back to Narok again for you to be told, this part is not clear, this part is not clear. So they are taking a lot of time. So it is also a problem that we encourage or we encounter. At the same time, during the formulation of the process, it was also very time consuming and very hectic, because it is not an easy thing for global community to come in and give us a way. If the global community did not came, we could not come through this far. But when they came to our county, the global community assisted us a lot, and if it were not for them, we could have not go that far we have reached. And because our bill was presented in Parliament in the county, then it was hindered, because they were told that you don't pass this bill because it needs amendment to be done. So you wait for the other amendment a cooperative amendment bill in Nairobi, that is which was in parliament. So after it will be done, then you bring yours to be passed in the county assembly. So we also got a challenge because the bill was not read, and everything was done, but because of that legislation in Nairobi, it could not go through. So it was also a challenge for us, and we encountered, and we saw it as a very big challenge because we could have moved a step ahead. We could have introduced the finance cooperative bill, which we could have used to source fund from the county government to be assisting the SACCOs and doing other things, and even assisting the cooperative society in our county. But because of that bill, it did not go through, we could not go or get the money from the county government. So it was a challenge.
Thank you. Am I audible? Okay, thank you. So, Santi Bwana Mpatian, so as he passes the mic to Eric, perhaps you could also tell us about the strategies that you used to walk through this journey of public participation and stakeholder engagement, generally, but also in the prosecution of these drafts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm Peter Deuri, Director Cooperative Nyeri. And for us, Nyeri, Nyeri and global communities entered into a memorandum of understanding in the month of March 2020, and therefore it has been a very successful journey for us. By that time, we didn't have a county policy in place, and therefore after we undertook the PPMP training, as a county, one of the promises or actions we had endeavored to undertake was to go and review a draft of the county policy that we had, which we did. Then it informed our next action, which was to review the County Act that was enacted in the year 2016. And therefore, together with global communities, we were able to do that. And for us to be able to get there, we had to undertake the public participation. And one challenge that we used to have in Nyeri was the issue of governance and understanding between us, the county, and the leaders of the cooperatives who are the major stakeholders. And therefore, we had initiated a program in 2019 to be training the cooperative leaders. It is an annual program that we have, which we undertake. We facilitate them through the local universities. We had an MOU with the Dankimathi University. We would pay for all the leaders, each group 2 days. And therefore, through that program, they were also able to understand their roles as leaders and what was expected for them. And I think it also gave us an opportunity to be able to explain to them our mandate and what we are supposed to do, and them also what was expected of them. And in that process, we also took advantage of the program to explain to them what we were doing in terms of policy and legislation. And therefore, it was easy for us when we wanted now to do the legislation. We called them. We had a forum in Nyeri for all the leaders, which we also invited the global communities. And we were able to explain to them clause by clause of the act and what we were proposing. We also did the same for the national bill. But I think the challenge was, it was easy to do it to the leaders and some members of the public, but the issue of COVID forced us also to incorporate the issue of online submission, and only few of them could be able to do that. Yesterday, my CC said that one of the strategies was to engage or to have forums with the county assembly, which we did. We were able to have a session with the sectorial committee on cooperatives. Then later we had one with the whole house or the assembly. And we were able also to explain to them the policy and the proposed amendments. And it was easy for us when it was taken to the county assembly. I think we didn't have challenges. It took, I think less than within a month, they were able to pass before the term lapsed. And then when the governor came in for the second time, he was able to assent to the bill. And therefore in Nyeri, we have the County Cooperative Act. And still, together with global communities, we've drafted the regulations which we are awaiting ratification by different stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bwana Theuri. I picked up two very important aspects. You know, training and also imparting of information as very, very important precursors to effective stakeholder engagement and public participation. So as we move to Bwana Koskie to tell us about the Bomet experience, I don't know whether it was similar to Nyeri's, or were there any other different strategies that you used to walk through the journey? Karibu.
Thank you so much, Bobby and the team. Good morning. As I'm Frederick Koske, I'm the Assistant Director with the Department of Cooperatives in Bomet County. The journey in Bomet, I can say it started way back when the devolved units came, because there were so many issues that was affecting the cooperatives. The government was new, and there was a lot of challenges across the sector. So it is only through the policy and the legal framework that you can address some of the issues. First is the issue of governance. The new government wanted to use cooperatives as a model for reaching out to the citizens at the bottom of the pyramid. And there was no legal basis on how can you fund cooperatives, which is a private entity. And you know, the constitution gave out that the function to, that is the article, Schedule 4, 7A, that cooperatives belongs to the counties. But there were no legal framework where you can really get to the, to use cooperatives as a means of getting resources to reach the people. So when the devolved units came, there was those issues, and we were trying to assist. So in fact, we formed ward-based cooperatives, which was called multipurpose cooperatives. We had challenges because when the Auditor General came, they were raising pertinent issues around why are you using public funds to, so we were giving out as grants. So we had to come up with a policy that was in 2014, and then that policy we used to fund the cooperatives. Because in Bomet County, it is an agricultural county. There is a lot of things going on dairy value chain, the tea sector. So you find that most of the cooperatives are marketing cooperatives doing value addition and all those. So we had to engage even other stakeholders. We engaged USAID. There was a project called FARM. There was also DAI, which was a USAID funded program, and then HADI. So we used to engage them through formal engagement, that is MOUs. So when in 2018, around there, we were so eager when global communities came. I think we were among the first counties to get engaged with the global communities through the CLEAR program when it started, whereby we did a lot of trainings and all those. And also, in 2015, we reviewed our policy, and we tried to come up with an enterprise development fund for cooperatives, although we shared among the different departments, that is social, we are trade, and the others. So that is where we we tried to bring out all the sectors. That is, we engage all the stakeholders to ensure that everybody is covered. So when global communities came, because of the nature of our county, we engaged, we did the lobbying, especially through the respective representatives of the people, because according to Article 196, I think it is on public participation. Before you do anything, you have to consult. That is why when we even go on development of CIDP, that is the first one, the issue of cooperatives came out very strongly. Same with the second generation CIDP. I think now we are in the third generation, that is from 2022, 2027. So cooperatives, because it covers maybe wider area, the MCAs, the public, were saying that we need support, maybe like a cooperative to have a cooler, a cooperative to have a value addition side, a cooperative to be supported maybe to come up with the advances on, like if it is a SACCO. So that is where we derived the urge to support them. And we have engaged various stakeholders on the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bwana Koske. I think the issue of, initial interaction documents, and we've heard from Bwana Theuri and now Bwana Koske, MOUs are very important to initiate stakeholder engagement. I think that's one thing we are picking from the discussions. As we go to Bwana Mwasi from Kilifi, and I have to mention one of my home counties, so I'm particularly interested to hear about your experience. Please tell us, and you may share whether MOUs and the other strategies that the 2 or 3 counties we've heard from were relevant to Kilifi, and whether there were any other nuances, any other approaches that were different from the 3 counties that we've had from so far.
Okay, thank you so much, Bobby. My name is James Mwasi. I'm the Assistant Director for Cooperatives, Kilifi County, and a proud alumni of the Strathmore University Business School, as among the 264 students who were taken through the PPMP course and graduated. So our story is not different from what we have heard from Bomet and also Nyeri. As a county, we started our journey in the year 2017. And I think what provoked us then was when the national government came up with a draft policy, that is the national cooperative policy. It was in draft form. So in that draft, they had given recommendations that the county governments are supposed to come with their own specific laws. That is the cooperative bill. So what we did as a directorate, we aggregated best brains within amongst ourselves, that is the technical officers, comprising of the cooperative officers and the cooperative auditors, and developed our own cooperative bill then. So that bill, after we developed it, we realized that we have actually moved ahead of the national government because that policy was still at draft level. And again, the national government had not yet come up with a cooperative bill or even act. So we paused a bit, but again, the process gained momentum once again when we had the engagement with the global communities. We were taken through the training, and we were privileged to have 8 officers trained on the PPMP course. Then again, during that time, I think we had developments at national level. The national cooperative policy had been adopted. So that gave us the impetus now to forge ahead. So we ask ourselves that we have this task of developing a bill, but again, we don't have a plan in place. So that is how we came to revisit the issue of us coming up with our own county cooperative policy so that it can guide the whole process. So we started that journey by first developing the county cooperative policy. And in the process of doing that, we engaged all our stakeholders. That included the national cooperative organizations. We also included our cooperative leaders in all our 7 sub-counties. And we also had the public participation forums for all the leaders in our sub-counties. And those who could not attend those forums, we ensured that they participated by making written submissions. So we prepared templates that were supposed to guide them on how they are going to bring out their issues and also proposed their intervention. So after that, we sat again and now developed that policy. So during that process, global communities also came in hand because previously we didn't have any formal engagement with them. They tried to come up with an MOU, but again, it was frustrated along the way for reasons that were not very clear to us. So when the new government came in place, our Waziri, Hongala, tried to rebuild that relationship again. So he made courtesy visits to global communities, and that is how now they agreed to support us. But again, they told us, we'll support you with conditions because our program is almost coming to an end, and the resources have also dwindled. So we cannot give you full support, and that's when we came up with the cost-sharing arrangement. So we agreed that in a period of 6 months, we should be able to complete this journey because by then, that is when the program was going to end. So we started by looking at the cooperative policy that we had done. So with the help of the consultants then, that is the consultants from global communities led by our very own Bobby Mkangi, and also the county legal office, we were able to fine-tune that policy, and we also ensured that it is aligned to the national policy. Then after that, we began now that journey of developing the bill, and the beauty of it is that we already had a zero draft, the one that we had developed as a department. So in that process, we were able to move fast because we already had a zero draft. So the teams that were there assisted us to fine-tune that document, and that is why, as a county, we were able to finalize the process within 6 months. So as we speak, we have our draft cooperative bill that, of course, was taken through all the processes because we also did public participation and involved all members of the public through physical meetings, forums, and also through written submissions. We have it. It is in the desk of our minister, awaiting submission to the cabinet for their consideration and probably onward forwarding to the county assembly. And again, we also have our regulations in place, draft regulations. So we ensured that as we are completing the finalizing on the bill, we are also doing our draft regulations. So we have them in place. They'll be forwarded to cabinet together with the bill and also the policy. So it was like trying to kill 3 birds with 1 stone. So that is where we are, Bobby, in terms of the legal journey. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bwana Mwasi. I was waiting to hear about, and it came out, we know the stereotypes about MOUs in Kenya, and for the previous 2 counties, I think the experiences were positive. So thank you for fulfilling that stereotype with the initial MOU. So as we cross over to Professor, as I was alluded earlier, please help us deconstruct this stereotype of institutions of academia being ivory towers that are, unreachable and, seldom engage with who we call the common mwananchi or the Wanjiko of our day. What has been the experience with CUK, specifically, but also generally? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bob. My name is Wycliffe Oboka, and thank you for inviting me to this event, and particularly to this panel. I come from the Cooperative University of Kenya in the Institute of Cooperative Development. The Cooperative University of Kenya is one of the oldest institutions in this country, having started in 1952. And with a very particular mandate to support the cooperative development in Kenya and in the region Africa. It became a full university in 2016, and still with a very particular mandate to support the cooperative movement. In its documents of, in the charter, it's expressly indicated so. We are aware of the view by the public that universities are ivory towers. And we cannot afford to be that if we are to play the role of supporting the cooperative movement. A university is an academic institution. But because we are supposed to support the cooperative movement, within its internal structures, the university has set aside, has established the Institute of Cooperative Development as its outreach arm, through which it directly engages with the cooperative movement. And that's the institution, the institute I'm heading as director, and that is why I'm here. Now, through that institute, part of outreach to the cooperative movement, I have directly engaged with the process of cooperative policy development in the counties.
Sorry, Professor. Can you hear? Or we need a new microphone? Oh, perhaps you.
Hello?
Okay.
May I use that one? Thank you so much. I think this is okay. So as I had said that being a university that has a particular mandate to support the cooperative movement, the university has established an institute called the Institute of Cooperative Development, where I'm serving as director for that purpose. And through that institute, I have directly engaged with the policy development in the counties, where I have seen counties struggled with the process of policy development with the very good support of global communities, whom we have also worked very closely. Now, what has been my experience with the process of public participation? And if we have one great value in our 2010 Constitution is the requirement of public participation in any development engagement, and particularly in the policy development and other related issues. Now, as counties engage with this process, and I have seen them trying their level best, questions arise as to how meaningful is the process, how meaningful is the engagement of the public through that process. And for us to say that we achieved a very meaningful public participation, a number of questions arise. One is, what is the mode of invitation to our events? Is it open to anybody who wants to come in? Or is it restricted to an organization one enjoys membership? Who initiates the invitation? An officer within the county, or how do we get that done? And if an officer is doing that, how do we ensure that an officer does not bring persons who will have a given orientation in terms of ideas, so that an idea that would not have been favorable is kept away? How do we ensure that anyone who wanted to participate got an opportunity to do that? Again, the question of do we facilitate them to come, or they come on their own efforts? And if we do that, the question is it possible that by not facilitating, someone who will have a good idea but cannot make it to the venue is left out? So the question of the meaningfulness of the engagement comes into mind. The question of how much time do we allocate to the actual public participation events or the process? If we are to do it in an hour, in a day, and the possibility that we can have 3 events set in a day, how much are we getting out of that, and how meaningful is that? So, Bob, it has been a good experience seeing the efforts the counties are making around that. Resources are always a constraint on their part. Then the risk of the politicians hijacking the process, so that it's the voice of the politician and not the voice of the people who should really have the ideas heard. The issue of the amount of time allocated to the process has always been a challenge. My thinking would be that, and again, the period within the cycle, election cycle, becomes a big considerations to make. Where I interacted with the process, partly we were doing this towards the end of the terms of assemblies, and it reaches a time when you find that the process is at a very advanced stage, and the MCAs have switched off, so the process stalls at that point. I am not sure whether a process starting when, I mean, it depends when the resources are available. I'm not very sure how the experience has been when we start the process with the freshly elected government at the county, and MCAs are still very eager to make an impact. I don't know how that will play out, but by and large, this is something that we should make very core part of our process in the counties. While we are not getting it perfectly well because of the issues, we are getting a contribution of the people who are going to be impacted on by the policies we are making. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor. At least now we know what the ICD particularly is for, in terms of outreach. That's its main focus of the CUK. And you also brought out a very good qualitative criteria we can use to determine whether our public participation, stakeholder engagement practices are efficient and effective. I'd like to invite my sister, Mukami, to also look at this issue from more of a national, centralized, if I may put it, again, standard setting way, because I think that's how COG comes into play. And because of the interest of time, I would like you to deal with two issues. You deal with that initial issue, but also the second limb, and which will be our final. You can tell us what you think, and especially government, and that's national and county governments, can do to improve public participation and stakeholder engagement. And that will also be our last question and issue to prosecute for the panelists. So as Mukami finalizes, she'll pass the mic to Mwasi, and then we'll go on the way to Professor, and that will be our final take for this morning. Thank you. Karibu.
Thank you, Bobby. I can be heard? Can I be heard? Thank you. Just to pick up from where Prof's left off, a few things I've noticed with counties, especially when it comes to public participation, is the monetizing bit of it. He mentioned, do you pay for the participants to come? Do they come out of their own volition? That's a huge challenge. You find that there are people who are very passionate about a particular sector for purposes of this conversation, cooperatives, and they will come willingly. However, as a country, we have monetized this process, which is a huge challenge, because then if the county or the national government doesn't have a very big budget towards the public participation, then you find that there's very little participation that is done. And I think I'll leave that question at that and then go to what can we do. Public participation is very close to my heart, because I feel like we as Kenyans don't know the power that we have towards policies and laws in this country. The housing fund, for instance, the public participation, the outcry was so huge that it moved from 3% to 1.5%. If that's not a lesson on how powerful we are as a people, I don't know what else can teach us that. So segueing from there, how can we as counties take advantage of the already existing structures to ensure that we hear as many voices as possible? I keep saying that sometimes we really try and look out and think outside the box, yet the box really worked. We have market days. I think in every town, we all know, one of the little towns that I belong to that can claim me has market days on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And those are such fantastic opportunities to have these conversations with the people, because traders are present, the people who are coming to purchase from the traders are present, and these are conversations that can be had. We have, again, because we're in cooperatives, we have chamas. These chamas are held, in fact, there's a friend of mine I keep making fun of, because every weekend she's in a chama or another. And so these are opportunities we have to have conversations with the people in these chamas to hear what they have to say. Churches. I particularly like churches in our rural areas. They usually have a time set aside to discuss issues that affect them. I can see my sisters and brothers from the Muslim community. I don't know if you have that such opportunities in the mosque, where after prayers and after doing what took you there, you can have an opportunity to sit down and have these conversations. Schools. How about we incorporate some of these things at the curriculum level and at the primary and high school? Our children have fantastic ideas. In fact, this new generation shocks me every single day. They have ideas that can really, really work if we give them the opportunity. So I think for me, it's more of how can we as the government, seeing as we are the majority in this room, plug into the already existing structures in our counties without really reinventing the wheel and hear the voice of the people. We have the notice boards. Each government office, I don't know about now, but growing up, all the government offices had the notice boards with thumbtacks, and people could leave their comments there. People knew when to, when a certain baraza or meeting is being held and have these conversations. Our chiefs, again, they're constantly having people in their offices, and those are opportunities to have these conversations. All these examples are just to say that there are structures that exist, there are structures that are functioning, and we can truly plug into them. However, if we continue with this very linear thinking of for public participation to be had, we must call people in a room, we must provide tea, we must pay them for transport and all this. Let's go to them as opposed to bringing them to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As the mic moves to Mwasi to prosecute the same issue. Thank you, Mukami, for reminding us and reiterating what the Honorable PS told us yesterday during his opening remarks, that we can always use what we have first. So the box still works first. Let's see whether the box works first before we move out of the box. So Mwasi, kindly, what do you think we can do in our counties to improve and tame effectively this animal called public participation and improve stakeholder engagement?
Okay, thank you, Bobby. I think I will share our experience as a county, especially on how we were able to effectively engage the public. I think first of all, we need to appreciate that public participation is an important ingredient in the legal making process or in the legislative process, and we cannot do away with it. So what we did as a county, or rather as a directorate, when we had stakeholder engagements during the policy making, when we were doing our policy, we invited the cooperative officials within the county. So what we did is that we held these forums in our sub-counties. So we were able to go closer to where they are. And that is how we managed to reduce the costs that were to be involved in that process. So we coined them as leaders meetings. These are things that they normally do on annual basis. But again, we said that one of the agendas is to validate what we have as a county cooperative policy. And that's how we managed it. When it came to now the bill, where we are to engage now the entire public, what we did is that it had a very big cost element, but again we engaged our partner, global communities, who came in handy. They supported us with venue. They paid for the venue costs and also the public address system. So ours was to meet on bottled water and other small expenses. But again, we also ensured that we chose venues that are convenient to the Karisas that we're dealing with. So each and every sub-county, we ensured that we chose a central place where they can easily converge and participate. Then we also ensured that we allocated some hours that are within from 9 to around 11, so that they cannot demand for lunch. Yes. So that is how we also try to manage our costs. And I think from 9 to around 12 is enough hours to engage the public on the same. Otherwise, I think you'll appreciate that it is a very costly affair, so you need to be very innovative in terms of trying to achieve your goal. The other aspect, I think, is on the politicians. Politicians are also very critical in this process. So what we did for the MCAs, especially the ones that are in the Committee for Trade, we ensured that trade and cooperatives, we ensured that we sensitized on the process, sensitized them on the entire process. And we also invited them in our drafting sessions. They were there and they gave their input as MCAs. And even when we were doing the public participation, we ensured that the area MCA was involved in the process. In fact, it is them that we appointed as guests to open those forums. So there was effective involvement of our MCAs. Then on managing the transition, I think the process started when we were transiting from one government to the other. So when the new team came in, we were actually in the process of coming up with those documents, policies. So what we did is that we sensitized our leaders, that is the chief officer and the waziri, and I think from there, they ran with the program very well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mwasi. As we go to Koske, I picked two very important aspects, which are also tied to what Mokami had brought out, working with what we have. So innovation, make it more facilitative, go closer to the people, use the facilities they have, and also be clever, wily in some way. It also reminds me sometimes when you see you've been invited for a meeting and it starts at 2, you already know you are supposed to have taken care of your lunch, isn't it? So, Bwana Koske, let's hear of Bomet's experience, but also what do you think we can do as Bomet county government and generally to improve public participation and stakeholder engagement? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before I go to what Bomet has done, I want to allude to what Prof has said, that sometimes public participation is can be hijacked by the politicians. And I say because it is, there are a lot of political interest. If maybe the MCA sees that there is nothing that they'll gain from maybe a policy or a legislation, they may try to shut it down. So we must do something to reduce that. The other issue is when we are doing public participation, there is the issue of elite capture. That is the people who can talk so much, who have influence in the community, can hijack also the same, just like the way politicians can hijack. But in Bomet, we have tried to do the following. One is we have what you call Bomet County Public Participation Act, which is 2018, which also supports the process. We also have a Department of Civic Education, which usually, in case of any issue, they can go to public. And because I think public participation is a continuous process, it should always be there. Because sometimes you can do a policy or a bill for a very long time. But as Prof said, when you conduct public participation, you do in 2 hours. That will not bring out what the Wanjiku wants in the ground. And when you say also you want to bring people to maybe a given place, most of the ideas which the local mwananchi had may not be heard. Also, the other issue is in every department we do some small budget for public participation. Like when we are doing the budget, normal budget cycle, we had a budget for public participation where you can use, even if it is small. I'm not saying we pay the people to come and do public participation, but at least because you can take a lot of time, maybe they can get water. Yeah, and small, maybe like if it is soda, something like that. Because I know if you there is the issue of monetization of public participation. People come because they know they'll get maybe transport reimbursement back. Thank you.
Asante sana. Two important things: institutional, premising of public participation in terms of even within our government. So the Department of Civic Education, and also legislation, like you said, it's very important to entrench public participation and the institutions thereof. So, Bwana Theuri, karibu.
So thank you. What I think we should do to improve public participation, I think sometimes we make it to appear like public participation is a formality. We only do it as a step because the Constitution demands that we do that. But there is need maybe to enhance civic education so that even the public can feel it's their obligation to participate in these forums. And that way, we may be able to attract people who can bring value to this process. Because the reason why people come expecting to be paid, maybe the people who are coming are those who may not have something to do for that day, or they are looking at it as, if I stop to doing what I'm supposed to do, then there should be someone to reimburse me. But if it can be their obligation, then even people who have something to do can leave it and come for these public participations, and will be able to get valuable inputs that can help in the process. And then, like, there's something that is happening in the health sector. We are having what we are calling community health volunteers. Maybe at some point we may also need to have champions for civic and public participations who can even go up to the villages. These people, when they are equipped with the information, the materials, then whenever we have an activity that we need them to participate, we can use the same structure for them to whip the public, inform them, and then through them, we can get people who can come and assist us. So, because in every forum in their village, people will know they always have information, and maybe even when you meet, they can ask you what is going on. And in every forum that doesn't need to be facilitated, they can give this information. In the village, people always want to be associated with something. There are people who feel very proud that they are recognized as the community champion, and that way we can have people who can help us in the process. So thank you, but I think as a culture, even us from the government side, we need to see it as an important process that we can get feedback and input of the public, not just a formality or a step that we need to be seen that we undertook. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Theuri. As it goes to Bwana Patianya, what I picked from your input is that we need to internalize and normalize public participation. Make it more of a day-to-day sort of way, modus operandi. I like saying public participation in the sense of the institution we think of it should be thought of more in terms of the values and national principles around open governance and transparent administration. And I think if governments infuse that, then you come up with methods that will make sure that you are on a daily basis, on a 24/7 basis, you are constantly interacting with the mwananchi, who is our boss. Over to you, Bwana Mpatia.
Okay, thank you, Bwana. Is it Bogi?
Yes, that's
Bobby.
it. Yes.
Okay, Bobby. Okay, to me, what I can say is that public participation is very good. It's very interesting. And I would like just to say, if for us we want to participate in public participation, we need to create awareness. In the sense of that we can create through the radios, through the TVs, and through other social media. By the time you call for public participation, at least people will have known what is going to happen or what they are required out of them. Secondly, as it has been said by my friends, that politics is also a very big role, but because if you don't have the blessing of that politics in your county, you cannot go through. For example, if you don't call the MCAs who is in that steering committee, you have not taken them for a retreat, or you have not taken them for a seminar, they say, that is hell, we cannot do away, we don't want to listen to that. So, however, we want to use the little that we have in hands. We should take part in, because how we can source people and we can make sure that by the time we present this to them, it can go through. Thirdly, I would like to say that being a devolved unit, it has been a challenge because after 2013 to now, many of our officers are not trained on cooperative. However, they have degrees and whatever. Cooperative is something unique. It's a challenge because you try to tell somebody how is the formation of a cooperative. He has degree holder and hajui hiyo vile ataweza kuambia hawa. So it is my request to the cooperative university, the global community, another organization. You can take that as a whatever, you put more input on training of the cooperative officers in the counties, because it is also a challenge. You can tell somebody, go and train, go and participate in that public participation, and he or she does not have the knowledge about the cooperative training, so it's also a challenge. So you can take from that the county government and the Ministry of Cooperative need more of your support, need more training. You can start maybe 2 weeks, or a month, or 3 months, so that our people, our officers, most of them will be enlightened on how the cooperative is more about, because it has been a challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Professor, close it for us with that precursor from Wanampatian.
And Bob, that is a scenario across the country because we are in a political system, and you are most likely to find that 90% of officers manning cooperative dockets do not have that knowledge, as my brother here has indicated. So that is an issue. So how is this person going to engage cooperators in a discussion about public participation, yet him or her doesn't have any understanding of what cooperatives are and the principles and values and so on and so forth. But I want also to start back on what Deuri indicated, the risk or the danger of us doing public participation for the sake of it, so that we say we did it. And then related with that, if you go around the country, you are going to experience very great regional differences in the interest in public participation from the public and how it's done. You are likely to find a scenario whereby in some regions, even if you are to organize here, you will go around pleading with the people to come and participate. There are areas, if you announced that there will be public participation, you will find the public eagerly waiting to make an input into the process. Going by that, and the danger of it being done for the sake of it, I will really take what our sister has indicated. If you want to make public participation really meaningful, the use of existing community structures will make a very big difference. And every community has structures that you can go out and meet them there. If you were to organize meetings, you have excluded many of them. But deliberate effort, conscious effort to meet them within the systems that exist in the community will reduce the cost of the exercise and give us very meaningful contribution to the process. Apart from that, there are, technology makes it possible for us to engage at different times. At the Cooperative University, we follow the same principle. There is no policy you can make within the institution and does not go through the process. So what we have done to make the process open, apart from asking for written submissions, we have meetings that are virtual. And I'm sure, though it excludes part of the segment of the community if it was supposed to be done outside there, but it can bring voices of people who can make a very useful contribution without any additional costs on our part and on the public. If we say there will be events in these sub-counties, but apart from that, on this day, from this time up to this time, we will have virtual meeting whereby people can air their views relating to a policy that can really add participation into the process and give us a very wide array of views from the population. And a big thank you for the global community and what they are doing, and this event for us to be able to ventilate.
Thank you very much. I think we have picked very important points about how we can go about effective public participation and stakeholder engagement. These are topics that perhaps would have taken a whole day to exhaustively tackle. But because time is not our best ally, we'll have to leave it at that for today, but continue with the conversation in our different spaces. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. As I excuse my panelists, I'll kindly ask you to give them a round of applause as they leave the podium. Asanteni sana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bwana Bobby and the entire panel. For the participants, do you feel your questions have been answered? Do you feel you have been engaged actively? Excellent. We are doing quite well on time, and I will stand guided by Pam or Olga. We could dispense of all the panels, so we could go immediately to the next panel when the energy is still high, and then we go for tea, and then we come back for plenary, and once we are done, we go for lunch, and it's relaxed. Is that okay? For the participants, is that okay? Take advantage of the energy. I therefore have the pleasure of inviting Muthoni Njoroge. Karibusana Muthoni. Wakili Muthoni will take us through the next panel. And Olga, I think we now have enough chairs. We might be able to, yes. And then Mukami, you might end up rejoining the panel, or we might have counties only. I think we'll stand guided by Muthoni, and Muthoni, you're part of global community. So over to you. Karibusana.
Good morning. I hope you're all doing fine today. I'd like to welcome the panelists for my panel, where we'll be discussing the public policy making process from the perspective of the counties. Please welcome the following persons to the stage. Representing Mandera County, Madam Miski Hassan. Representing Kitui, Mr. Paul Ngei. From Nakuru County, Mr. George Ogalo. And Samburu County, Mr. Robert Laika. We also have Homa Bay County, represented by Mr. Brightwan Onyango. And finally, from Tana River County, Madam Amina Gobu. Do we have Tana River County, or the substitute for Madam Amina? She's going to join. Okay, thank you. So I'd like to start with introductions so that we first get to know our panelists and what's the role they do in the county. So welcome, starting from that.
Hello guys, my name is Miski Hassan. I'm the County Chief Officer representing Mandera County. The County Chief Officer, Cooperative Development and Marketing. Karibusana.
Good morning. My name is Paul Ngei. I have a third name, Moni. It's a difficult one for some of us. I'm the County Chief Officer in charge of cooperatives and citizen group economic empowerment initiatives in Kitui County. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is George Ogalo. I'm a Principal Cooperative Officer, Nakuru County Government, Department of Cooperatives.
Good morning. My name is Robert Leaburia, Principal Cooperative Officer, Samburu County Government.
Morning. I'm Nyango Brighton, Cooperative Officer for Marube County. Thank you.
Okay. On this panel, we'll be discussing the experiences on this panel we'll be discussing the experiences that you went through when making the policy, in the public policy making process from a county perspective. And the first issue we will discuss is I've been informed that Darakanidhi is happy to join. Please, the Chief Officer, kindly join us. We'll give him an opportunity to introduce himself.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Peter Kemathinjero. I'm the Chief Officer in charge of Agriculture, Livestock, Fair Services and Cooperative Development, Tharaka-Nithi County. Thank you.
Okay. As I was saying, I'd like the panelists to discuss their internal processes. How did you come to deciding that you want to start the public policy making process, and what are the challenges you faced? In particular, especially from the chief officers on the panel, I'd like to hear the internal processes that you went through from a financial perspective and the challenges that came in, especially that the need for the policy doesn't always follow the budget that has already been done or that's coming, and the opportunities that you saw that to meet the gaps in financing the policy-making process. The previous panel discussed how expensive it is, especially the public participation, but also the consultative meetings. Welcome, Madam.
Thank you, Madam Mothoni. So the experiences that we had as Mandera County in the public policy making process. First of all, it's true we had no budget. We had no budget allotted for the policy making process. But on the bright side, we had a budget for training and capacity building. So we utilized that budget. I had a chance to interact with some of you guys. I can see that the cooperative movement, we have a challenge. Most of the departments lack the budget. So as a chief officer, I will tell my colleagues, maybe this financial year has already started. Maybe the next financial year you should allot a budget for policy or training and capacity building. So apart from that, I would like to really thank the global communities for their support. They really came in handy. We had the drafting with global community and her team, the legal team led by Mr. Bobby. Thank you very much. The overall experience was quite interactive. We gathered a lot of insights from the relevant stakeholders. We had the cooperative officers. They really had the on ground, they're the ones who usually know the needs of the cooperatives. So thank you to my team and shout out to them. And apart from that, we had a challenge in Mandera County, religious issues. So most of our cooperatives suffer from the financial inclusion because we need the Sharia compliant financing. So we really incorporated that with the help of Bobby. Thank you. And we had an issue with the table banking, the locally loans and credit associations, but we catered for them in our drafts bill. So that's mostly our experience, and I would like other counties to borrow a leaf from us as you borrow a leaf from you guys. I had a lot of insights from you, so thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Paul, please.
Yeah, from the very onset, I wish to state that we had a very interesting start with the process of making our policy. When we came in this year, in February, we found that at our county, there existed a draft policy that was done in 2014 and had been gathering dust somewhere on some shelf. So when we came, we tried to find out what was happening with it. We were told nothing has happened on it. And so we started the process of reviewing it internally to see what gaps it had. And that was just a normal process for us because there was nothing really pushing us. And considering that the document had been on the shelves for close to 10 years, there wasn't much push to get it out. But then, and we also had a draft bill. Actually, we had two sets of draft bills that existed, but that had just been put somewhere in the shelf. Thank God that our technical team that we found, the directors and assistant director and the technical staff, were aware of the existence of these documents. So we picked them and I started looking at them as part of our own understanding of what has been happening and how the environment has been. And so we started looking at them without a lot of push. But then in April, just the last 3 days of April this year, we came to a workshop in Manzoni, that workshop was a consultative workshop forum, which was funded by NCBA Closer, Global Communities, the State Department for Cooperative were also there, and there were very many other actors in the cooperative movement, and that's when we got to hear about CLEAR program. After the presentation by Olga and the team, Pamela and others, we got to understand that there was the program of supporting counties to come up with their policies and their legislation, and we got to engage Olga and the team on that process. Maybe we can talk about what happened after that. But then now, coming to the question, which is about the challenges that we have gone through, one of them was actually trying to find out what the policy and the bill that was done so many years ago was supposed to address. We've been able to come through and find out what exactly was supposed to be addressed by those two documents, and that has given us the push now to get them to some good level of development. The other problem, like in most of the counties, was the issue of budget allocation. The experiences we've had from most of the counties is that the cooperative departments rarely have much money to talk about. You find very little money that exists. Yesterday we had about the challenge of money being taken out from the corporate departments to other departments that supposedly are more important than the cooperative department. And that has been a challenge. But we've been able to push, our entire government, our cabinet, and the county assembly to allocate more money for us, and we've been able to deal with that. Not very sufficiently, but we believe the trajectory is good, and we are moving to, a better position in terms of getting funding. So where did we get the money to go through the workshop and the drafting workshop and the other processes? We have some lines for development, especially around governance. So we got some money there, and thanks to Global Communities, we got co-funding. They brought the consultants, they brought money for the hotel, and I think Rio is going to become the other name for cooperative movement in Kenya, because that is where here drafting happens, and that is where things have been happening, and that's good. We really appreciate. The other problem we had was time. We appear to be very busy at the county governments, getting people to our workshop for 3-4 days, and you can tell by today how many people we have today compared to yesterday. People are too busy, but we were able to whip our people. I thank my director and our minister for whipping the team to come. And Bobby and Martin did not give us much space. It was sit throughout I remember some days we would leave at 9. And Pamela would be with us throughout, and Olga too. I remember one day, Olga had to be told, you must eat. She wasn't feeling well, but somebody sat with her and said she must eat to get well and be able to get through the job. So we were able to do that, and we thank God, and everyone was involved in that process. The other challenge that everyone has experienced, and we are experiencing the same too, is getting the political side of the government, the county assembly, to be with us as we do the process. I must report that we have a very good relationship with our sectoral committee, Trade, Industry, and Cooperatives Committee of the County Assembly. And we are involving them in the entire process. We haven't gone very far. Maybe I'll be able to give an update on where we are later on. But they know what we are doing, and they are actually in the picture. They know where we have gotten to, and they are waiting for our document and an opportunity for us to interact with them in a more open session with the entire committee of 11, so that we are able to, to go through the document before it gets to the assembly. And we believe that we will not experience challenges as far as that process is concerned. The other challenge always that always comes with most of us is that getting the legal input from the legal team at the county level is not easy. In fact, we didn't get our county attorney's office representation until the second day because of the kind of work they are doing at the office. But we got him, and when he came, Bobby, our legal guy as well, and Martin were able to really make good use of him, and we realized he could help us. Now he's actually doing the final tooth comb review of the policy and the bill, and we were happy that he was able to do that, and he's working with that throughout the process, despite the fact that his department appears to only have 2 or 3 people, but he has been able to give us time to do that. So those are some of the things that we have gone through, and we believe that we will successfully go through the process, and we'll be able to come up with a policy and a bill that is acceptable to our people, and the regulations as well that will be able to guide the development of our cooperative sector in county. We realize that, or some of you may know, that in Kitui, the cooperative sector is quite nascent. We don't even have, we have as many or as few, for some of you, as 400 cooperatives in the entire county. So we have got quite a bit of work to do, with quite a number of them being dormant, but we are working hard to make sure that everybody comes up and does what they're supposed to do in the spirit of bringing better into operation within the county. I believe we are going to be very successful with this kind of resources around here in terms of skills and minds and support from technical people in the counties. We are going to benchmark, and from also the donors and other partners, including SBS. Thank you very much, and I hope we will be able to share more.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes, thank you so much. For Nakuru, our journey started in 2018, and this was in response to the governor's manifesto on the need to do the implementation of the projects of the government through the cooperatives. So we were tasked with the duty of coming up with an act or a policy that will ensure that the implementation of the activities of the governor are aligned to what need to be done. So we came up with a policy or an act to do cooperative development fund, and this may be due to lack of knowledge by the staff then. It never took off, and in 2020 we had an agreement with we signed an agreement with the global communities, and we are able to be enjoined in the PPMP project course. So through this course, the officers were able to gain the technical knowledge necessary for the policy making process. And after that, again, from the experiences that we gained, we were able to now start looking at the policy itself, the county cooperative policy, because it was at the same time that the discussions were going around about the national policy that needed to be put in place, and the amendment of the act. So going back to the challenges, our main challenge was a lack of understanding from the executive on what exactly we do as a department. Now, many times we are being confused with a cooperative bank. And at times, they are wondering why we sit in the government offices. We are supposed to be in the bank, you see. So we need to create a good understanding with the executive, so that they understand really what we do as a corporate officers.